Hello, everyone. This is Live Life Well TV host Robert Landau. We are back with another episode of America's Greatest Personalities. This episode, we will take a look at one of America's greatest writers and personalities. In his case, the two really go hand in hand. We're going to take a look at the great Ernest Hemingway. Stay tuned. So let's start off with some Ernest Hemingway trivia. Ernest Hemingway had a nickname. Do you know what it was? Papa Hemingway. What types of literature do you think Ernest Hemingway created? The answer to that is novels, short stories, and newspaper articles, in that case as a journalist. True or false? Ernest Hemingway was married 3 times. That is false because Ernest Hemingway was married 4 times. True or false? Ernest Hemingway loved sports and especially liked boxing and playing the occasional game of football. That is true. True or false? Ernest Hemingway had a college degree. That is false. Why? Because Ernest Hemingway never went to college. And finally, true or false, Hemingway was 6 feet tall and weighed anywhere between 170 to 260 pounds. That is true. Ernest Miller Hemingway was born on July 21st, 1899 in Oak Park, Illinois. If you're not familiar with Oak Park, it happens to be a suburb of Chicago. He was the first son and the second of 6 children. Ernest's father was a physician and happened to have been present at Ernest's birth. His father was so overjoyed that he was given a son that he stood, get this, on his front porch in Oak Park and blew a horn as darn loud as he could to let all of his neighbors know that his wife had finally given birth to a son. Ernest's mother wanted to be an opera singer, but ended up giving voice lessons and caring for her children. She really wanted twins in the worst way. She wanted twins so much that, get this, she would dress Ernest and his sister in similar clothes with similar haircuts so that they actually looked like twins. Did young Ernest appreciate being dressed as a girl? No, especially since his mother, get this, kept calling him Ernestine instead of Ernest. Ernest's mother also wanted Ernest to pursue a career in music. Ernest wanted to do more of what his father liked to do, hunting and sports, anything that was active and had to do with the great outdoors. That's what Ernest wanted to do. And because the family had a house on Michigan's Walloon Lake, Ernest developed a lifelong love of nature and remote areas. His first writing assignment was as the editor of his high school newspaper. He did really well at that, which led him to his first real job as a reporter for the Kansas City Star. I used to live in Kansas City, and let me tell you that the Kansas City Star is truly a great newspaper. Excellent journalism, which is kind of hard to find nowadays. But Ernest would only stay there 6 months, but the style of writing that the Star insisted all of its reporters adhere to would be the style of writing that Ernest Hemingway would adhere to for the rest of his life. And in the Kansas City Star's words, here was what that particular style of writing was all about. And I quote, "Use short sentences, Use short first paragraphs. Use vigorous English. Be positive, not negative, unquote. You know, when it comes to newspapers and the news media, that's very difficult to find, even to this day. Congratulations, Kansas City Star. I hope you're still living up to your own words. World War I was raging in Europe, and Ernest felt that he needed to be an active part of it. He wanted to roll up his sleeves and do anything that he can to help the war effort. So what did he do? He joined the Red Cross Ambulance Corps and found himself in Milan, Italy, on the front lines, driving ambulances in extremely dangerous and treacherous conditions. He was overwhelmed one day when he had to pick up the pieces of ladies that had lost their lives in a factory that unfortunately had been bombed. This event, as you can well imagine, shook Hemingway to his core. He stopped driving ambulances when he became injured delivering supplies to soldiers on the front lines. Even though he was hurt, he dragged an Italian soldier out of harm's way, risking his life in the process. That was Ernest Hemingway. After the war, Hemingway would take a job as a reporter for the Toronto Star. In 1921, he would marry his first wife, Hadley Richardson, and they would live in a suburb of Chicago. The Hemingways would now move to Paris, where Ernest would become best friends with the one and only Gertrude Stein. And if that wasn't enough, he would also be best friends with Ezra Pound. Wow, what great literary friends to be in the company of. And I'm sure they felt the same way about Ernest. During this time, which was 1923, Hemingway's first book would come out. It was called 3 Stories and 10 Poems. It was also during this time that the Hemingways had a son by the name of John Hemingway. Now, a book of short stories would debut in America. Were they a hit? Yes, they were. In 1925, another book would be released by Ernest called The Great Gatsby. You'd think that everyone loved Ernest Hemingway at this point in time. He was certainly very popular, but unfortunately, not everyone did. F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife, Zelda, hated Hemingway. She thought his machismo energy was an act and also accused him of being homosexual. Not only that, but she would literally call Ernest Hemingway, quote, bogus, unquote, and, quote, phony as a rubber check, unquote. Now, Hemingway's literary talents would yield another novel, very successful. It was 1926, and the name of this book was The Sun Also Rises. Now, Hemingway would divorce his first wife and marry his second, a lady by the name of Pauline Pfeiffer, who happened to have been a devout Roman Catholic from Arkansas, would wed Hemingway in 1927. 1928 would not be a very good year for Ernest, unfortunately. His father, who had a severe case of diabetes and also had severe financial troubles, would commit suicide using a gun from the Civil War. I can't imagine how that would affect Ernest, but you can be sure it hit him to his core. A second son would now arrive, and his name would be Patrick. In 1929, another book would be published by Hemingway. It was called A Farewell to Arms. In 1938, Hemingway would write and publish 49 short stories. Were these well received by the public? Oh, you better believe they were. Now, Ernest would move, and this was really well known at the time, still is, to Key West, Florida. He would hang out at a local bar there called Sloppy Joe's, and more books would be published. Key West served as kind of like a literary muse for Hemingway, but he would not be without some health problems. And this is an understatement. Here are just some of the health problems poor Ernest would have to endure: an anthrax infection, a cut eyeball, a gash in his forehead, severe toothaches, and hemorrhoids, kidney trouble from fishing in Spain, a torn groin muscle, a finger gashed to the bone in an accident with a punching ball, lacerations to his arms, legs, and face from a ride on a runaway horse through a forest in Wyoming. And if all of that wasn't enough, my God, I'm in pain just thinking about all this, a broken arm from a car accident. Ouch! But Ernest soldiered on, and in 1940 would publish For Whom the Bell Tolls. During World War II, Hemingway was a war correspondent for Collier's Weekly. In 52, Old Man in the Sea was published. And was this a success with the public? You bet. He couldn't go wrong that way. Now, though, he would divorce and marry once again. How about this? More personal injuries would follow from a safari that Ernest took in Africa. Just listen to this. He sprained his right shoulder, his arm, and his left leg. Ernest had paralysis of the sphincter, a crushed vertebrae, ruptured liver, ruptured spleen, and kidney as well. First-degree burns on his face, arms, and leg. Ouch! Would you believe that some US newspapers ran his obituary thinking that he had been killed in all of these horrible accidents? But he was still with us, at least then. Ernest Hemingway would deservedly win the Nobel Prize for his sensational body of work. It was also at this time that many knew that Hemingway had an alleged severe drinking problem. He also happened to have extremely high blood pressure. Hemingway, it was known, did not care to take care of himself, so he was always at risk health-wise. Because of all of that, and besides all of that, he also would suffer from severe bouts of depression. He even attempted suicide in the spring of 1961, but fortunately it didn't work. But Hemingway must have been disappointed because he tried once again later that year. Unfortunately for all of us, this time it worked. On July 2nd, 1961, the great, incredible Ernest Hemingway was found dead with a bullet in his head. And I can't help but think that that's how his father went too. There's some sort of emotional and psychological connection to that, but then again, I'm not a degreed therapist, so I'll just take that as an idea for you to consider. On that day, the world lost a major literary talent and a truly wonderful soul. Suffice it to say, and this is an understatement, that Ernest Hemingway changed the face of the fine art of writing in America, if not the world. And suffice it to say, we will never, ever see another like him. somebody who truly understood what living in the moment was. When you're connected with your passion, and that's how you lead in life, well, hell yes, you'll injure yourself all the time because you're so into living, you kind of forget about what you're doing. I'm going to close with some quotes that this great man once said. And let's start with this. Always do sober what you said you would do drunk. That will teach you to keep your mouth shut. Hemingway also said, there is nothing to writing. All you got to do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. He also said, when people talk, listen completely. Most people never listen. The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. Two more. Ernest said this, all my life, I've looked at words as though I were seeing them for the first time. And finally, we have this. For a true writer, each book should be a new beginning where he tries again for something that is beyond attainment. He should always try for something that has never been done or that others have tried and failed. Then sometimes, with great luck, he will succeed. Ernest Hemingway didn't only do that when it came to the amazing literary work that he created, he also did that with his life. And I, for one, tip my hat to the great Ernest Hemingway. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host. We look forward to seeing you on another episode of America's Greatest Personalities. Thank you for tuning in.